Thunder cracked across the Arizona sky as two feathers stumbled upon the old settler's barn. Inside, golden eyes gleamed from the darkness, a massive cougar, blood seeping from its side. Most men would have ended the threat then and there, but two feathers saw something in those eyes beyond the ferocity, a kindred spirit, wounded and alone in a changing world. Against all wisdom, he stayed. For 46 days, through winter's bite and the suspicion of nearby settlers, he nursed the great cat in secret. The cougar grew stronger while their bond deepened into something neither man nor beast could explain. But what would happen when the predator regained its full strength? Could such a creature ever truly be an ally? Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. The morning sun cast long shadows across the weathered planks of the barn, as two feathers returned with a bundle of sage and juniper. 3 days had passed since he'd discovered the wounded cougar, and still the great cat lived, defying the severity of its wound. Two feathers knelt at a respectful distance, observing the steady rise and fall of the animal's ribcage. "You are strong," he whispered in Apache, his voice barely audible above the wind whistling through the barn's broken slats. "Stronger than the bullet meant to end you." The settlers called him Two Feathers because of the paired eagle feathers he wore, tied in his long black hair, a simplification of his true name that meant he who walks between worlds. At 52 winters, his face was a map of deep lines earned through decades under the harsh Arizona sun. Most of his people had been forced onto reservations, but Two Feathers remained free, surviving in the borderlands between two colliding worlds. He pulled the bone-handled knife from his belt and began preparing a poultice. His hands moved with practiced precision, cutting and grinding the herbs against a flat stone. The settlers in Broken Creek tolerated him because he was useful, tracking lost cattle, predicting weather changes, occasionally trading pelts and medicinal herbs. They kept their distance otherwise, their eyes revealing what they truly thought of the Indian. The cougar's ear twitched at the sound of the knife against stone. Its amber eyes opened, regarding Two Feathers with a mixture of pain and weariness. "Be still," Two Feathers murmured. "I am no threat to you, mountain spirit." In the Apache way, cougars were sacred, powerful beings who carried messages between the physical and spirit worlds. His grandfather had taught him that harming such a creature would bring misfortune, yet many of his people would still have killed this one, wounded as it was. A suffering predator was unpredictable, dangerous. Two Feathers had lost his wife and daughter to the fever 3 winters ago. Their absence had hollowed him, leaving him to wander between settlements belonging nowhere. Perhaps that was why he recognized something in this cougar's eyes, a kindred aloneness. He moved closer, the fresh poultice cupped in his palm. The cougar growled low, a rumble that vibrated through the straw-covered floor. "Your pride speaks," Two Feathers acknowledged with a slight nod, "but your body needs help." Slowly, deliberately, he edged forward until he was within striking distance of those powerful jaws. The wound on the cougar's flank was an angry red crater, where a rifle bullet had torn through muscle. By some miracle it had missed vital organs, but infection would claim the animal without treatment. Two Feathers began to hum softly, a healing song passed down through generations. The cougar's eyes remained fixed on him, but its growls subsided. With careful movements, he applied the poultice to the wound. The great cat flinched, but did not strike. "Tomorrow I will bring meat," he promised, backing away once the medicine was applied. Outside the barn, he studied the surrounding land. The structure stood abandoned at the edge of what had once been the Miller homestead, before drought and hardship drove them east. The nearest farm was 3 miles away, distance enough to keep his secret safe for now. Two Feathers made a small fire behind the barn and settled against a boulder. As darkness fell, coyotes called from distant hills. He clutched his knife, thumb tracing the symbols carved into the bone handle: protection, strength, wisdom, his grandfather's gift when he became a man. "What am I doing?" he asked the night sky. Helping this cougar went against practical wisdom, yet something deeper than reason guided him now. In the barn, the cougar's labored breathing gradually steadied as the medicine took effect. Two Feathers closed his eyes, listening to the rhythm. For the first time in years, he felt a peculiar sense of purpose, as if the paths of man and beast were meant to cross on this particular ground, at this particular moment in time. Dawn broke with a copper glow as Two Feathers returned to the barn carrying a freshly killed rabbit. The night had been restless, filled with dreams of his grandfather standing at the threshold, between worlds, pointing toward the barn with silent insistence. The cougar lay where he had left it, but its eyes tracked his movement with new alertness. Two Feathers approached slowly, placing the rabbit within reach of the great cat. The animal's nostrils flared at the scent of blood, but it made no move toward the offering. "You must eat to heal," Two Feathers said, settling cross-legged a few feet away. When the cougar still didn't move, Two Feathers retrieved his knife and skinned the rabbit with practiced efficiency. The fresh meat glistened in the thin shafts of sunlight filtering through the barn's broken roof. He placed the prepared meat closer to the cougar's mouth, then retreated. Only then did the animal stretch its neck and take the offering, consuming it in 3 powerful bites. Two Feathers nodded with satisfaction. "Good. This is good." From his deerskin pouch, he removed a small cedar box, its surface darkened by decades of handling. His grandfather had carved it from a lightning-struck tree, a powerful omen. Inside lay objects of significance: a stone arrowhead, older than any living memory, a tuft of eagle down, a small piece of turquoise, and a dried cougar's paw print preserved in clay. "I seek guidance," Two Feathers whispered, touching each item in turn. The decision to help the cougar was made in a moment of instinct, but continuing this dangerous alliance required deeper consideration. Town gossip already circulated about missing livestock attributed to a cougar. If discovered harboring such a predator, Two Feathers would face more than suspicion. He would face a rope. The wounded animal watched him with unnerving intensity. Most cougars fled from human presence, yet this one's behavior defied natural law. Two Feathers had heard tales of mountain spirits taking animal form to test a person's character, but such stories seemed distant from this blood and bone reality. "If you are just a cougar," Two Feathers said aloud, "then I risk my life for nothing more than another predator." The animal's tail twitched as if in response. Two Feathers examined the wound again. The poultice had drawn out some infection, but healing would be slow, weeks perhaps. Commitment to this path meant sacrifice, time, resources, safety. He thought of the white doctor in Broken Creek who had refused to treat his wife and daughter during the fever. "Indians get sick in Indian ways," the man had said, closing his. Two Feathers had used every remedy he knew, prayed to every spirit, but still watched them slip away, powerless to change their fate. The memory burned like a coal in his chest. Here was something he could save, if he chose to. From the cedar box, he selected the clay paw print, pressing it between his palms. "My grandfather told me our clan was descended from the mountain spirits," he said to the cougar, "that in times of greatest need, they would recognize their own." The cougar's eyes, golden in the morning light, held his gaze without blinking. Two Feathers replaced the items in the cedar box. The decision crystallized within him, not from mystical revelation but from a simpler truth. This animal suffered, and he had the means to ease that suffering. Whatever consequences followed would be accepted. Rising to his feet, Two Feathers moved to the barn door and looked toward Broken Creek, a smudge of smoke and buildings 3 miles distant. He would need more supplies than his meager camp provided. Bandages, stronger medicine, meat. Each journey to town increased the risk of discovery, but there was no other way. "We are bound now, you and I," he said, without turning, "until you walk free or death finds one of us." Behind him, as if sealing this covenant, the cougar released a soft, rumbling sound, neither growl nor purr, but something in between. Two Feathers, adjusted the worn hat pulled low over his braided hair as he entered Broken Creek. He had bound his distinctive feathers in a leather pouch. In town, it was better to be seen as just another Indian, rather than Two Feathers, specifically. The settlement consisted of little more than two dusty streets, lined with false-fronted buildings, a church steeple rising above them like an accusing finger. The general store's bell announced his entrance. Inside, the familiar smell of coffee, leather, and tobacco hung in the air. Behind the counter, Mr. Harlow eyed him with customary suspicion. "Don't want no trouble today," Harlow said by way of greeting. "I bring trade," Two Feathers replied, placing 3 rabbit pelts on the counter. While Harlow examined the furs, Two Feathers scanned the shelves. What he needed lay behind the counter. Medical supplies kept separate from everyday goods. "These'll do. What are you after?" Harlow asked. "Coffee, salt." Two Feathers pointed to items that wouldn't raise questions. The store's door opened, and Sheriff Mills entered with 2 ranchers. Their conversation halted when they noticed Two Feathers. "Speaking of which," the taller rancher said, continuing whatever discussion Two Feathers had interrupted. "Parker lost another calf last night. Throat torn clean out. Mountain lion?" the sheriff asked. "Has to be the same one. That makes 3 this month." Two Feathers kept his expression neutral as he paid for his goods. The wounded cougar in the barn couldn't have killed anything recently, which meant another predator roamed these parts. "Tracked it through Spring Canyon," the rancher continued. "Lost the trail near the old Miller place." Two Feathers' pulse quickened. The abandoned barn sat on what had once been Miller land. "We're organizing a hunting party for tomorrow," Sheriff Mills announced, looking directly at Two Feathers. "You're good at tracking. Could use your help." The room fell silent. The offer wasn't kindness, it was suspicion wrapped in opportunity. Two Feathers knew how these men thought. An Indian would know where predators hide. An Indian might even be protecting one out of some heathen reverence. "I go north tomorrow," Two Feathers lied. "Many miles." The sheriff's eyes narrowed slightly. "That's so? Thought you were sticking around these parts lately." "North. Trading with Navajo." Two Feathers gathered his purchases. 3 days. As he turned to leave, his gaze caught the medical kit on the shelf behind Harlow. Bandages, carbolic acid. Necessities for treating the cougar's festering wound. "Next time, bring more pelts," Harlow called after him. "Quality ones." Outside, Two Feathers circled behind the buildings, counting windows and watching movements inside the store. When the sheriff and ranchers finally left, he slipped back through the rear entrance where supplies were delivered. The storeroom was dim and cluttered. He moved silently past barrels and crates until he found what he sought, a small tin medical kit kept for emergencies. His fingers closed around it, knowing its theft would be discovered, knowing accusations would follow. A floorboard creaked nearby. Two Feathers froze as Harlow's daughter Emily appeared in the doorway, a broom in hand. Her eyes widened at the sight of him. For a long moment, neither moved. Then, to his surprise, her gaze dropped to the medical kit in his hand, and something like understanding crossed her young face. "Pow's out front," she whispered. "Go out the back way." Two Feathers hesitated, then nodded once in gratitude before slipping past her and out the rear door. The journey back to the barn seemed longer, weighted by the stolen kit and the knowledge of tomorrow's hunting party. The cougar would need to be moved, but in its condition, any movement risked reopening the wound. When he arrived, he found the animal had dragged itself to a water dish he'd left that morning. Progress, but far from the strength needed to flee hunters. "They come tomorrow," Two Feathers told the cougar as he opened the stolen kit. "Looking for one of your kind." "Not you, but they will find you all the same." The cougar's eyes tracked his movements as he prepared fresh bandages soaked in carbolic acid. "This will burn," he warned, "but clean the poison." When he pressed the treated bandage to the wound, the cougar's powerful body tensed, a low growl rumbling from its chest. But it did not bite, did not strike. Instead, it endured, its eyes never leaving his face, as if it understood their shared peril. First light hadn't yet broken when Two Feathers heard the distant baying of hounds. The hunting party had started earlier than expected. He quickly gathered the few possessions scattered around his small camp outside the barn and buried them beneath a cairn of stone. Inside, the cougar was alert, ears pricked toward the sound. 5 days had passed since Two Feathers found the wounded animal, and though the infection had begun to recede, the cougar remained too weak to flee. "We must hide you deeper," Two Feathers murmured. The barn's main floor offered little concealment, but Two Feathers had discovered a root cellar beneath rotting floorboards. In the corner, a space just large enough for the cougar if it remained still. He approached slowly, carrying a red clay bowl filled with water. The cougar had accepted food and medicine from him, but he had not yet attempted to move the animal. This would be a test of the fragile trust between them. "Drink," he said, placing the bowl before the great cat. As the cougar lapped at the water, Two Feathers gently placed his hand on its shoulder, feeling the powerful muscles beneath the tawny fur. The animal stiffened, but continued drinking. "Good," he whispered. "Now we must move." With slow, deliberate movements, he slid his arms beneath the cougar's body. The animal growled low in its throat, but did not strike. Two Feathers lifted, surprised by the cougar's weight despite its weakened state. The wound on its flank had begun to close, but fresh blood seeped through the bandages as he carried the animal toward the cellar opening. The dog's baying grew closer. Two Feathers descended the narrow steps into darkness, cradling the cougar against his chest. The cellar smelled of damp earth and forgotten potatoes. He laid the animal on a bed of straw he had prepared the previous night, then covered them both with an old horse blanket that would mask their scent. "Be still now," he whispered. "Be silent." Above them, the barn door creaked open. Boots scraped against wooden planks. Men's voices. "Tracks lead this way. Sheriff. Spread out. Check every corner." Two Feathers felt the cougar's muscles tense beneath his hand. He applied gentle pressure, a silent plea for calm. The animal's golden eyes glowed in the darkness, fixed on his face. "Nothing here but old straw," a voice called from directly above them. "Cougar wouldn't hole up in a building anyway," another man said. "Probably just passing through." "What about that Indian? Two Feathers? Wasn't he supposed to be heading north?" "That's what he claimed. Haven't seen him since yesterday." The footsteps moved away, but Two Feathers remained motionless. Patience had saved his life many times before. The cougar, too, seemed to understand the need for stillness, its breathing slow and controlled, despite the proximity of danger. An hour passed before Two Feathers deemed it safe to emerge. The hunting party had moved westward, following false tracks he had laid the previous evening. He carried the cougar back to its place in the barn, careful of its reopened wound. As he set the animal down on fresh straw, it did something unexpected. It pressed its head briefly against his arm, a gesture so reminiscent of gratitude that Two Feathers found himself momentarily startled. "You understand," he said softly, "more than an animal should." He rebandaged the wound, then brought the red clay bowl, now filled with strips of rabbit meat. The cougar ate from his hand for the first time, its rough tongue occasionally brushing against his fingers, without aggression. Two Feathers settled beside the animal, watching as shadows lengthened across the barn floor. The hunting party would return, perhaps with more men, certainly with more determination. Each day here increased their danger. Yet as the cougar's head settled heavily against his leg, Two Feathers felt a certainty grow within him. This alliance between predator and man defied natural order, but it also transcended it. The ancient ones spoke of such bonds, of animals who chose to walk alongside humans for purposes beyond mortal understanding. He stroked the cougar's head, his fingers tracing the pattern of darker markings around its eyes. "I will call you Mapia," he said. "It means sky in Lakota, my mother's people, because your eyes hold all the colors of dawn." The cougar blinked slowly in response, a gesture Two Feathers had come to recognize as contentment. "That's 12, Two Feathers murmured, counting the distant riders cresting the eastern ridge. More than before, a week had passed since the first search, and the hunting party had returned with reinforcements. Through his spyglass, traded years ago for a month's worth of beaver pelts, Two Feathers observed the men's methodical approach. No longer random searching, but a coordinated sweep of the territory. Beside him, Marpia lay in the tall grass, her golden eyes following the movement of horses. The cougar's strength had returned enough for short excursions outside, always under the cover of dawn or dusk. The wound had closed cleanly, though a raised scar remained where the bullet had torn through flesh. Two Feathers crouched and used a stick to draw in the soft earth. A rough map took shape: the barn, the creek, the ridgelines, the town of Broken Creek to the south. He marked the hunters' positions with small stones. They divide into 3 groups, he explained, though he wasn't certain how much the cougar understood. Here, here, and here, they will close like a fist. Marpia's attention shifted from the distant riders to the map, her eyes tracking his movements with unsettling intelligence. We cannot stay, Two Feathers decided. Tonight we move. A new development had forced his hand. Yesterday, while gathering herbs by the creek, he'd discovered fresh cougar tracks too small to be Marpia's. Perhaps her cub, though he'd seen no evidence she was nursing. If another cougar was killing livestock, the hunters would never cease their search. The sound of a rifle shot echoed across the valley. Birds scattered from treetops as the report bounced between hills. Two Feathers flattened himself against the earth, pulling Marpia down beside him. The cougar complied without resistance, a behavior no wild predator would display. Signal shot. Two Feathers whispered. They found something. Through his spyglass, he watched the distant riders converge toward the western slope, away from the barn. But in the direction of the tracks he discovered, a sliver of relief mixed with concern. If they caught the other cougar, would the hunt end? Or would it only fuel their determination to eliminate all such predators from the territory? When the hunters disappeared beyond the ridge, Two Feathers led Marpia back to the barn. Inside he gathered the few supplies essential for their journey: medicines for the cougar's still healing wound, dried meat, his knife, and spyglass. Everything else would remain behind. As dusk approached, Two Feathers sensed Marpia's growing restlessness. The cougar paced the length of the barn, pausing occasionally to scent the air flowing through broken boards. You feel it too, Two Feathers observed. The changing wind. He had planned to wait until full dark before departing, but Marpia's behavior suggested urgency. Trusting the animal's instincts, Two Feathers secured his pack and moved to the barn door, peering cautiously outside. The sound reached him before he saw its source: horses approaching at a trot, not from the ridge but from the direction of town. A smaller party, perhaps 3 or 4 riders. Back, he hissed to Marpia, retreating into the barn. No time to reach the root cellar. Two Feathers led the cougar to the hayloft ladder. To his amazement, the animal understood, climbing awkwardly but quickly to the upper level. He followed, pulling the ladder up behind them just as the barn door swung open below. Told you I saw smoke, a man's voice declared. Someone's been camping here. Could be that Indian. Another replied. Sheriff said he was supposed to be up north, but Harlow swears he saw him near the creek yesterday. Check outside. I'll look around in here. From a crack in the loft floor, Two Feathers watched a lantern-bearing figure move through the barn below. Beside him, Marpia remained perfectly still, as if comprehending the precariousness of their position. The searcher paused directly beneath them, raising his lantern. Hey, there's a loft up there. Two Feathers reached for his knife. Discovery now meant death, for the cougar certainly, for himself probably. Yet he found himself curiously calm, ready to defend this animal that fate had bound to him. Forget the loft, called a voice from outside. Found something more interesting: fresh cougar tracks heading west. Big ones. The man below hesitated, then turned away. Coming. Two Feathers released a silent breath as the barn door closed behind the searcher. Beside him, Marpia's tail twitched once in what might have been relief. West, Two Feathers whispered. They will follow those tracks until dawn. He erased the dirt map with his palm, drawing a new route. The eastern mountains offered refuge, but at a cost. 3 days into their journey, Mapia's wound reopened during a difficult climb. By nightfall, fever gripped the cougar. Two feathers made camp in a shallow cave overlooking a narrow valley. Rain fell in sheets, turning the world beyond their shelter into a grey curtain. He built a small fire, shielded from outside view, and knelt beside the trembling cougar. The climb was too much, he said, examining the inflamed wound. The scar had split, allowing infection to take hold once more. From his pack, Two Feathers removed a tightly bound bundle of white sage, his last connection to the medicine ways of his people. He had gathered these sacred leaves during the full moon, when their power was strongest, saving them for a time of greatest need. That time had come. Mapia's breathing grew labored, her golden eyes dulled with pain. Two Feathers placed his hand on her head, feeling the unnatural heat radiating through her fur. Without treatment, the infection would reach her blood. Death would follow swiftly. He lit the sage bundle from the fire, allowing the aromatic smoke to fill the cave. The familiar scent transported him back to his grandfather's lodge, to healing ceremonies witnessed as a child. Two Feathers had never been chosen to carry the medicine ways that honor had gone to his brother. But he had watched. He had remembered. Great Spirit, he began, his voice low but steady. I am not a medicine man. I have no right to ask for your help. But this one, he gestured to Mapia. She has shown courage and trust beyond her nature. If any deserve healing, it is. Two Feathers circled the cougar with the smoking sage, allowing the purifying smoke to flow over her fevered body. He sang softly, recalling fragments of healing songs. The cougar's eyes followed his movements, recognition flickering despite her weakened state. When the ritual was complete, Two Feathers set to work with more practical medicine. He cleaned the wound with boiled water, applied a poultice of crushed juniper berries and yarrow, then bound it with strips torn from his own shirt. Night deepened. The rain continued its assault on the mountainside. Two Feathers maintained his vigil, periodically checking Mehia's temperature and replacing the poultice when needed. He did not sleep. By dawn, his own vision had begun to blur with exhaustion. The cougar's condition remained unchanged, neither improving nor worsening. Two Feathers forced himself to eat a small portion of dried meat, knowing his strength would be needed in the days ahead. You must fight, Mehia, he told the cougar, stroking her head. I cannot do this alone. As if in response, the great cat shifted slightly, pressing her head against his hand. Two Feathers spoke through the long hours, telling Mehia stories of his childhood, of Apache legends, of his wife and daughter. Words he had spoken to no one since their passing, poured forth now, offered to this unlikely companion, who could not understand yet somehow seemed to listen. My daughter would have liked you, he said, smiling faintly at the memory. She believed animals carried spirits older than people. Her mother scolded her for such talk, but I knew she was right. Some things cannot be explained by what we see alone. The second night brought a breaking point. Mapia's breathing grew ragged, her powerful body racked with tremor. Two Feathers held her head in his lap, continuing his stories even as hope diminished. I was 7 when I first saw a cougar, he told her, voice hoarse from hours of talking. It watched me from a ridge while I gathered firewood. I was not afraid. Somehow I knew it meant no harm. My father later told me this was foolish, that fear keeps us alive. Perhaps he was right. He paused, his hand still stroking Mapia's fur. But perhaps there are times when trust matters more than fear. Near midnight, the cougar's trembling suddenly intensified. Two Feathers braced himself for the end, his throat tight with unexpected grief. Then, just as suddenly, the trembling ceased. Mapia exhaled deeply, her body relaxing. Two Feathers held his breath, placing his hand on her side. The fever had broken. Her breathing had steadied. You chose trust, he whispered. Outside, the rain finally stopped. Stars appeared between scattered clouds, their light filtering into the cave. Two Feathers allowed himself to lean back against the stone wall, his hand still resting protectively on Mapia's flank. For the first time in 3 days, he slept. The trading post sat in a forgotten valley 3 days' journey from Broken Creek. 2 weathered buildings with sagging porches, surrounded by corrals that rarely held more than a few mules. Most settlers avoided Samuel Reed's establishment, preferring to trade in town despite the longer journey. Samuel had married a Navajo woman 20 years earlier, a choice that marked him as an outsider among his own kind. 2 Feathers approached cautiously, leaving Mapia concealed in a thicket half a mile back. The cougar had recovered enough to travel, though she tired easily. 12 days had passed since they fled the barn. "I was wondering when you'd appear," Samuel called from the porch, his weathered face breaking into a smile beneath his gray beard. "Heard there's quite a commotion over in Broken Creek about you." 2 Feathers paused. "What do they say?" "That you're either been killed by that cougar they're hunting, or you're helping it." Samuel spat tobacco juice into the dust. $50 bounty on the cat now. Another 50 for information on your whereabouts. They blame the cougar for missing cattle. 3 dead, last I heard, plus a child got scared half to death. Claimed she saw a mountain lion watching her from the trees. Samuel gestured toward the trading post door. "Come inside." Sarah's made stew. The interior was cool and dim after the bright sunlight. Samuel's wife nodded in greeting before returning to her weaving. 2 Feathers respected Sarah Reed's quiet dignity, the way she moved between 2 worlds without seeming to belong fully to either, much like himself. Samuel ladled stew into a wooden bowl. "So is it true?" 2 Feathers accepted the food, considering his response. Samuel had never betrayed his trust, but $100 was more money than the trader would see in months. "I found a wounded cougar," he finally admitted. "I helped it." Samuel whistled low. "Dangerous charity, my friend. The cougar they hunt is not mine. Tracks are different, smaller. Try telling that to men with rifles and whiskey courage." Samuel sat across from him. "Where is it now, your cougar? Safe, healing?" Samuel studied him for a long moment, then reached into his pocket and withdrew a brass timepiece. He placed it on the table between them. "My father's," he explained. "Not worth much to anyone but me. Keeps good time, though." He pushed it toward 2 Feathers. "Take it. Where you're going, you'll need to know when night falls." 2 Feathers frowned. "Where I'm going? North. Apache lands near the territorial border. It's your only chance." Samuel lowered his voice. "Sheriff's deputized a dozen men. They're combing every hill and valley between here and Broken Creek." 2 Feathers touched the watch, feeling its steady rhythm. "Why help me?" Samuel glanced at his wife. 20 years ago, Sarah's people took me in when I had nowhere else to go. Said I had a twice-born soul. Never understood exactly what that meant, but I figure it's about seeing beyond what others are willing to see." He turned back to 2 Feathers. "What you're doing with that cougar, it's not natural by most thinking, but some things aren't meant to be explained by ordinary reasoning." Sarah approached, placing a small bundle on the table. "Food," she said simply, "and medicine." 2 Feathers nodded his thanks. "I need meat, fresh, for the cougar." "Take a deer haunch from the smokehouse," Samuel offered, "and whatever supplies you can carry." As 2 Feathers prepared to leave, Samuel walked with him to the edge of the trading post grounds. "One more thing," the trader said, his expression grave. "There's talk of bringing in professional hunters from Colorado, men who track with dogs and don't stop until they've made their kill. If you're heading north, start tonight." 2 Feathers pocketed the brass watch. "Thank you, my friend." "Don't thank me yet. Just stay alive." Samuel clasped his shoulder. "And 2 Feathers, that cougar, there's something different about it, isn't there? Something that made you risk everything." 2 Feathers thought of Mapia waiting in the thicket, of the intelligence in her eyes, of the way she seemed to understand his words. "Yes," he admitted, "something different." Samuel nodded slowly. "Then your path is right, no matter what others say. Go with God, my friend, or whatever spirits watch over such unusual alliances." As Two Feathers turned to leave, the weight of the brass watch in his pocket reminded him that even in a world determined to destroy what it didn't understand, allies could be found in unexpected places. The northern foothills offered temporary sanctuary. Two Feathers found a secluded vale beside a stream, sheltered by towering pines and bordered by rocky outcroppings too steep for horses to navigate easily. They had traveled for 5 days since leaving the trading post, moving only at night, resting during daylight hours. "This place will serve," he told Mapia, as they settled into a small cave overlooking the valley, "until you regain your full strength." The Cougar had improved significantly, but still lacked the explosive power and endurance that made her kind such formidable predators. Her wound had healed Keelan this time, leaving a prominent scar that pulled slightly when she walked. Each day, Two Feathers led Mapia through a routine of his own devising. Short walks at first, gradually increasing in distance, swimming in the cold stream to rebuild muscle without straining the healing tissue, climbing exercises on the gentler slopes. On the third morning in the vale, while Mapia dozed in a patch of sunlight, Two Feathers knelt by the stream to fill his water skin. A rounded stone caught his eye, smooth and black, polished by years of flowing water. When he lifted it, he discovered a natural pattern on its surface that resembled a cougar's paw print. "A sign," he murmured, turning the stone in his hand. His grandfather would have said such a find was no accident, that the spirits placed such tokens in the path of those who walked in harmony with their purpose. Two Feathers slipped the stone into his medicine pouch. When he returned to their camp, he found Mapia watching a deer grazing on the far side of the vale. The cougar's body was tensed, her attention completely focused on the potential prey. "Not yet," Two Feathers cautioned, placing his hand on her shoulder. "You are not ready." Mapia glanced at him, then back at the deer. To his amazement, she relaxed, settling back onto her haunches as the deer bounded away. "You understand more than you should," he said. "Not for the first time." That evening he examined her wound by firelight. The angry redness had faded, replaced by a pale scar partially hidden by regrown fur. He ran his fingers along it gently, feeling the ridge of healed tissue. "Tomorrow we try hunting," he decided. Together. At dawn, they set out along a game trail that followed the stream's course. Two Feathers carried only his knife, leaving his few other possessions hidden in the cave. Mapia moved beside him, her steps nearly silent despite her size. Two Feathers paused often, showing the cougar how to test the wind, how to identify fresh tracks, how to recognize the sounds that signaled game nearby. Whether she truly comprehended or simply humored him, he couldn't say, but her attention never wavered. Near midday, they found what they sought. A young elk separated from its herd. Two Feathers crouched beside Mapia, his hand resting lightly on her back. "This one," he whispered, "not too large, testing your strength, not proving it." He felt the muscles beneath his hand coil with anticipation. With a slight pressure of his fingers, he signaled her to wait as he circled downwind. The coordination between them had become almost instinctive, a partnership unlike anything Two Feathers had experienced with human or animal. When he was in position, Two Feathers made a soft whistling sound that drew the elk's attention. In that moment of distraction, Mapia moved, not with her full former speed, but with enough power to close the distance before the elk could flee. The kill was clean and quick. Two Feathers approached, as Mapia stood over her prey, her sides heaving with exertion, but her eyes bright with accomplishment. "Well done," he said, kneeling beside the fallen elk. He drew his knife and made the first cut, offering the choicest portion to Mapia. As she ate, he performed the ritual thanks his people offered when taking life to sustain life. That night, Two Feathers sat by their fire, turning the river stone in his hand. Mapia lay nearby, satiated and content after the successful hunt. Something had shifted between them, an equality that hadn't existed before. No longer was she merely a wounded creature under his care. They had become something his language had no word for, neither master and pet, nor simply two wild beings, but something between and beyond. We leave tomorrow, he told her, watching the firelight reflect in her amber eyes. The hunters will not stop searching. We must reach Apache lands before the first snow. The brass watch from Samuel showed nearly midnight when Two Feathers heard the distant howl of a wolf pack. Mapia's ears pricked forward, but she made no move to respond to the call of the wild. Instead, she shifted closer to the fire, closer to him. Two Feathers clutched the river stone, feeling its smooth contours like a promise in his palm. The journey north had been slower than Two Feathers hoped. Early autumn storms forced them to seek shelter for days at a time, and game grew scarcer as they climbed higher into the mountains. After 3 weeks of travel, they found themselves making camp in a box canyon that offered protection from the biting wind. Two Feathers was gathering firewood when he heard it, the unmistakable sound of a horse picking its way through rocky terrain. He froze, listening intently. A single rider, approaching from the east. "Mattia," he called softly. The cougar emerged from the shadows of a pine thicket, instantly alert. Two Feathers gestured toward a narrow crevice in the canyon wall. "Hide." The cougar obeyed without hesitation, disappearing into the darkness. Two Feathers concealed their meager camp beneath pine boughs, then took position behind a boulder, with a clear view of the canyon entrance. The rider appeared minutes later, not a grizzled hunter or sheriff's deputy, but a young woman bundled against the cold. She dismounted awkwardly, leading her horse into the canyon. Her clothes were of good quality but practical: wool coat, sturdy boots, riding skirt. A leather satchel hung at her side. Two Feathers remained hidden, watching as she surveyed the canyon. She moved with purpose, collecting small plants and examining them before placing some in her satchel. A healer or medicine gatherer, perhaps. When she knelt beside the stream where Two Feathers had collected water earlier, he knew his presence would be discovered. His footprints remained visible in the soft mud. The woman stiffened, her gaze following the tracks to the concealed camp. She rose slowly, one hand moving to the small revolver holstered at her waist. "I know someone's here," she called, her voice steady despite the slight tremor in her hand. "Show yourself." Two Feathers weighed his options. She was alone and seemingly not part of any hunting party. Still, any encounter with settlers was dangerous. "I mean no harm," he said, stepping from behind the boulder with his hands visible. "I am only passing through." The woman gasped, taking a step backward. "You're him, the Apache they're hunting." Her eyes darted around the canyon. "Where is it? The cougar?" Two Feathers kept his expression neutral. "I travel alone. They say you bewitched it, that you control it somehow." She hadn't drawn her revolver, but her hand remained near it. "My father's offering $100 for the cat. 200 for both of you now. Your father, James Parker, Parker Ranch, south of Broken Creek." She lifted her chin slightly. "I'm Elizabeth Parker." The name struck Two Feathers like a physical blow. Parker, the wealthy rancher who had first organized the hunting parties. The man most determined to see Mapia dead. "Why are you here, so far from your father's ranch?" he asked carefully. Elizabeth hesitated, then reached into her satchel and withdrew a leather-bound journal. "I collect plants, study their medicinal properties." She opened the journal, revealing pages of detailed sketches and notes. "My father thinks I'm visiting my aunt in Silverton." Two Feathers' surprise must have shown on his face. "Women aren't supposed to have scientific interests," she said with a hint of defiance. "But an aunt who needs help with household matters, that's acceptable." Her candor was unexpected, as was the realization that the daughter of his most determined enemy was standing before him, alone and unprotected. "These mountains are dangerous for solitary travelers," he observed. "I could say the same to you." Her gaze was direct, challenging. "Is it true about the cougar?" From the crevice where Mapia was hidden, Two Feathers caught the faint sound of movement. Elizabeth heard it too, her head turning toward the source. "If I meant you harm, you would already be harmed," Two Feathers said quietly. Elizabeth studied him, indecision clear in her expression. Finally, she took her hand away from her revolver. My father says all Indians are liars and thieves, that you commune with evil spirits. And what do you say? I say people fear what they don't understand. She closed her journal, returning it to her satchel. My grandmother was half Cherokee. My father never speaks of it, but she taught me that wisdom comes from unexpected sources. The winds shifted, carrying Mapia's scent toward the horse. The animal nickered nervously, pulling at its reins. You should go, the feathers advised, before your horse breaks free. Elizabeth nodded, then hesitated. They're bringing tracking dogs from Denver, men who've hunted mountain lions in California. She met his eyes directly. They'll be here within a week. Two Feathers inclined his head slightly, acknowledging both the warning and the risk she took in giving it. As she mounted her horse, Elizabeth looked back at him. Is it worth it, risking your life for an animal? Two Feathers thought of Mapia, of their journey together, of the bond that defied explanation. Some connections, he replied, transcend the boundaries we create between beings. Elizabeth's expression softened with something like understanding. Without another word, she turned her horse and rode out of the canyon, leaving Two Feathers to wonder if he had just encountered an unexpected ally or hastened their capture. Two Feathers broke camp before dawn, Elizabeth Parker's warning still echoing in his mind. Professional trackers with dogs would make their journey infinitely more dangerous. Dogs could follow scents days old, across streams and rocky terrain that would confuse human hunters. We must move faster, he told Mapia as they set out. The morning sky still dark above them. They traveled all day, stopping only briefly to drink from mountain streams. By dusk, they had covered nearly twice their usual distance, but at a cost. Two Feathers' legs ached from the punishing pace, and Mapia's limp had returned, her healed wound clearly paining her. As they made camp in a dense grove of aspens, the first snowflakes began to fall. Two Feathers gathered what firewood he could find, knowing a storm in these mountains could strand them for days. The Apache lands beyond the northern ridge were still at least a week's journey away, longer in poor weather. We may need to find shelter for longer than a night, he told Mapia, who watched him with weary eyes. A cave, perhaps, somewhere to wait out the snow. The cougar's ears suddenly pricked forward, her attention focused on something beyond the firelight. Two Feathers reached for his knife, listening intently. The soft crunch of snow underfoot. Someone approaching with little attempt at stealth. Hello? Called a familiar voice. Two Feathers? Elizabeth Parker emerged from the darkness, leading her horse through the falling snow. She wore the same riding clothes as before, now dusted white. Her cheeks were flushed with cold. You followed me, Two Feathers said, not lowering his knife. I had to come back. She glanced nervously at Mapia, who had risen to a crouch, muscles tensed. I brought supplies, food, bandages, and information. Two Feathers studied her face, searching for deception. Why? Elizabeth hesitated, then reached into her pocket and withdrew a silver hair comb. She placed it on a fallen log, between them. My Cherokee grandmother gave me this before she died. Said it would protect me. Her voice grew quiet. I've never shown it to anyone. My father would throw it in the fire if he knew. The gesture's significance wasn't lost on Two Feathers. She was offering something precious, a token of trust. The trackers arrived yesterday, Elizabeth continued, 4 men with 8 dogs. They're starting at the old Miller barn and working north. She opened her saddlebag and removed a small bundle. I brought jerked beef, coffee and medicine for fever. It'll snow hard tonight. You'll need shelter. Two Feathers lowered his knife, but remained wary. There are caves to the west, half a day's journey. No good. That's where they'll look first. Elizabeth glanced at Mapia, who had relaxed slightly, but still watched her with unblinking intensity. There's an old mining cabin near Eagle Creek. Abandoned years ago. It's east of here, away from their search pattern. Why help us? Two Feathers asked, the question that had burned in his mind since her first warning. Elizabeth's gaze dropped to the silver comb. My grandmother told me stories about spirit animals, creatures that choose to walk alongside certain souls. When I was 10, a mountain lion saved my life. She looked up, meeting his eyes. I was lost in the hills, fell into a ravine, couldn't climb out. Night was coming, and I thought I'd die there. Then I saw it, a cougar, watching from above. I should have been terrified, but I wasn't. Two Feathers felt Mapia move closer to him, as if drawn by the story. It led my father's search party to me, Elizabeth continued. They shot at it, but missed. My father said it was just a coincidence that the cat was stalking me, not helping, but I knew better. She took a deep breath. When I heard about you and your cougar, I remembered my grandmother's stories about old magic that still exists in these mountains. The snow fell heavier now, muffling the world around them. Two Feathers picked up the silver comb, feeling its weight, the weight of her trust. The cabin is a day's journey east, Elizabeth said, mounting her horse. I've left supplies there. My father thinks I'm heading back to Silverton tomorrow, but I'll delay as long as I can. She looked down at Two Feathers and Makia. What you have this connection. It's something special, something worth protecting. As she turned to leave, Makia did something unexpected. The cougar moved forward and gently brushed against the horse's leg. The horse trembled but didn't bolt. Elizabeth's eyes widened. Remarkable, she whispered. Her name is Makia, Two Feathers said. It means sky. Elizabeth nodded, a smile touching her lips. Stay safe, Two Feathers. Stay safe, Makia. Then she was gone, disappearing into the swirling snow. Two Feathers looked down at the silver comb in his palm, then at Makia. It seems we have a friend, he said softly, and perhaps a new direction. The abandoned mining cabin stood in a small clearing, its weathered logs nearly the same gray as the winter sky. Two Feathers approached cautiously, Makia moving like a shadow beside him. They had traveled through the night and most of the following day, pushing through deepening snow to reach the sanctuary Elizabeth had described. Wait, Two Feathers instructed, studying the cabin for signs of recent occupation. Finding none, he circled the structure once before approaching the door. Inside, the single room was spare but sound. A stone fireplace dominated one wall. A rough-hewn table and chair stood beneath the room's only window. In one corner lay a narrow bed frame with a fresh straw mattress, Elizabeth's doing, surely. Two Feathers found the supplies she had promised stacked neatly on the table. Coffee, jerky, bandages, even ammunition for a rifle he didn't possess. Beside them sat a note written in a careful hand. Safe journey. We can rest here, he told Mapia, who was already exploring the cabin's perimeter, sniffing at corners and shadows. The cougar paused near the bed, pawing at something beneath. Two Feathers knelt to investigate and found a loose floorboard. Beneath it lay a small metal box, the kind settlers used to protect important documents from fire and water. Curiosity overcame propriety. Two Feathers opened the box and found a faded photograph of a young woman holding an infant. On the back, written in faded ink, Clara and child, 1852. Beside the photograph lay a miner's claim document and a folded letter, its seal broken, but its contents still legible. Two Feathers carefully returned everything to the box, save the photograph, which he studied in the fading light. The woman's eyes held a familiar determination that reminded him, unexpectedly, of Elizabeth Parker. As darkness fell, he built a fire in the stone hearth. The cabin warmed quickly, and for the first time in weeks, Two Feathers allowed himself to fully relax. Mapia sprawled near the fire, her golden eyes reflecting the dancing flames. We are fortunate, he told the cougar, running his hand along her flank. The ribs that had been so prominent when he first found her were now covered with healthy muscle. Her coat had regained its luster, save for the strip of pale scar tissue that would always mark her side. Outside, snow continued to fall, obscuring their tracks and providing a blanket of silence. Two Feathers prepared a simple meal, sharing the jerky with Mapia. As they ate, he found himself talking to the Cougar as he might to a human companion. "Elizabeth reminds me of my daughter," he admitted. "The same questioning spirit, the same kindness beneath a strong will." Mapia's ears twitched at the sound of her name, her attention fixed on Two Feathers as if she understood every word. "My people believe that souls sometimes return in different forms," he continued, the firelight casting his shadow large against the cabin wall. "That those we have lost may find their way back to us through unexpected paths." He held up the faded photograph. "This woman, Clara, she made a life here, far from anywhere. I wonder what became of her and her child." He placed the photograph on the table. "Perhaps this cabin has always been a place of refuge for those between worlds." A sudden gust of wind rattled the cabin's single window. Mapia's head turned sharply toward the sound, her body tensing. "Just the storm," Two Feathers assured her. But the Cougar rose to her feet, moving silently to the door. Two Feathers followed, listening intently. Beyond the wind's howl came another sound, the distant baying of hounds. "Impossible," he whispered. "In this weather, with our trail covered." Yet the sound came again, closer now. The trackers had somehow found their direction, despite the storm. Two Feathers quickly gathered their supplies, his mind racing. The cabin was a trap, if the hunters discovered it. Yet venturing into the blizzard meant certain death. "The roof," he decided, moving to the window. "We can reach the ridge from there." Mapia watched as he worked, her golden eyes reflecting an almost human understanding of their predicament. Just as Two Feathers prepared to open the window, hoofbeats approached through the snow. He extinguished the lamp, plunging the cabin into darkness, save for the fire's glow. "Hide," he whispered to Mapia, guiding her toward the bed. The Cougar slipped beneath it just as a knock came at the door. Not the pounding of hunters, but 3 soft raps. Two Feathers came Elizabeth's voice, tight with urgency. "Are you there? You must flee. Now." He opened the door to find her snow-covered and breathless, her eyes wide with fear. "My father," she gasped. "He followed me." "How?" Two Feathers pulled Elizabeth inside, closing the door against the howling wind. "One of the trackers recognized my horse's shoes at the trading post." Elizabeth brushed snow from her coat, her movements frantic. "I didn't know I was being followed. My father and 4 men are maybe 10 minutes behind me." Two Feathers felt Mapia move out from beneath the bed, sensing the urgency. Elizabeth gasped at the sight of the Cougar, so close, but stood her ground. "She's magnificent," she whispered, before returning to the crisis at hand. "There's a ravine west of here, leads to a network of caves. If you leave now, you might reach it before." Hoofbeats approached, multiple riders. "Too soon. No time," Two Feathers said, quickly gathering his few belongings. Elizabeth moved to the window, peering through frosted glass. 5 riders, my father in front. She turned back, her face pale in the firelight. "He'll kill both of you. And you?" Two Feathers asked. "What will he do to you for helping us?" Elizabeth's expression hardened. "I'm his only child, his heir. He'll be furious, but he won't harm me." She hesitated. "At least, I don't think he will." The riders had reached the clearing. James Parker's voice cut through the storm, calling his daughter's name. "Hide in the root cellar," Elizabeth said, pointing to a trapdoor partially concealed by the bed. "I'll lead them away." Two Feathers shook his head. "Your father is not a fool. He will search the cabin. Then I'll tell him I saw you heading north." Elizabeth's eyes gleamed with determination. "Buy you time to escape east after they leave." Before Two Feathers could respond, the cabin door burst open. James Parker stood framed in the doorway, snow swirling around his imposing figure. He wore a heavy bearskin coat, a rifle clutched in gloved hands. Behind him, other men were dismounting, their voices carrying through the storm. Parker's gaze moved from his daughter to Two Feathers, then fixed on Mapia. The cougar had pressed herself against the far wall, golden eyes reflecting the firelight, muscles coiled to spring. Elizabeth, Parker said, his voice dangerously calm. "Step away from that Indian and his beast." "Father, please," Elizabeth began, moving between the men. "This isn't what you think. The cougar isn't." "Silence!" Parker raised his rifle, aiming past his daughter at Mapia. "Step aside." Two Feathers shifted subtly, placing himself before the cougar. "Your quarrel is with me, not her." Parker's weathered face twisted with contempt. "Her? You uke of this animal as if it were human." He turned to Elizabeth. "Is this why you've been sneaking away? To aid a savage and his pet killer?" "She's not a killer," Elizabeth insisted. "Not the one taking your cattle. Look at her markings. They're different from the tracks you found." Parker ignored her, addressing the men who now crowded the doorway. "Winslow, Ferguson, secure the Indian. Davis, fetch rope for the cat." Two Feathers tensed, calculating his chances. The odds were impossible. 5 armed men against himself and a still recovering cougar. Yet surrender meant death for Mapia, and likely for himself as well. As the men advanced, Parker reached into his coat and withdrew a silver pocket knife, his initials monogrammed on its handle. He flicked it open with practiced ease. "When I was a boy," he said, his eyes never leaving, "Two Feathers, my father taught me how to skin a mountain lion. The trick is to start at the throat." He twirled the knife between his fingers. "I'll demonstrate once we've secured this one." "Father, no." Elizabeth grabbed his arm. "This is wrong." Parker shoved her aside with enough force to send her stumbling against the table. "You've been bewitched by this Indian's ways. When we return home, you'll see reasons." Two Feathers caught Elizabeth's eye, saw the desperation there, and something else. A plan. She glanced meaningfully toward the lamp, then to the straw mattress. Understanding flashed between them. "Now, Indian," Parker said, stepping forward. "Call off your beast, and maybe I'll grant you a quick death instead of the hanging you deserve." Two Feathers straightened to his full height. "Mapia is not mine to command. She chooses her own path, as all free creatures do." Parker's face darkened. "Then you'll both die fighting." "Suits me fine." As the men advanced, Elizabeth suddenly lunged for the lamp, sending it crashing onto the straw mattress. Flames erupted instantly, racing across the dry bedding. "Fire!" someone shouted. In the ensuing chaos, Two Feathers grabbed his pack and whistled sharply to Mapia. The cougar understood immediately, launching herself toward the window. Glass shattered as her powerful body broke through. Two Feathers followed, dimly aware of Elizabeth's voice behind him. "Go! Run!" As he plunged into the snowstorm, he heard Parker's enraged roar, "After them! $500 to the man who brings me that cat's head." The blizzard swallowed them whole. Wind-driven snow erased the world beyond arm's length, turning the forest into a white void. Two Feathers pushed forward, one hand clutching his pack, the other buried in Mapia's fur, for guidance. The cougar moved with surprising confidence through the whiteout, her senses seemingly unaffected by the storm's fury. Behind them, voices called through the howling wind. Parker and his men, spreading out to search. A rifle shot cracked, the sound muffled by falling snow. A warning, or a hopeful attempt to hit unseen quarry. Two Feathers felt Mapia tense beneath his hand. She had stopped, her body low to the ground, ears flattened against her head. "What is it?" he whispered, straining to hear beyond the storm's roar. The answer came moments later, the baying of hounds, their voices carrying through the snow curtain. Parker had brought his trackers and their dogs. "This way," Two Feathers urged, pulling gently on Mapia's fur. They needed distance, needed to break their scent trail. In this weather, their only advantage was the storm itself. They plunged deeper into the forest, where pine boughs offered some shelter from the driving snow. Two Feathers' mind worked frantically, recalling the terrain he'd observed during their approach to the cabin. To the east, rolling foothills too exposed. West would lead them back toward the hunters. North meant higher elevations, more snow, certain death in the blizzard. South then, back toward the lands they'd fled, but in a direction Parker wouldn't expect. From his pocket, Two Feathers withdrew a battered brass compass. Its face cracked from a fall years earlier. The needle trembled, then settled, confirming his orientation. He adjusted their course southward, where the land fell away toward a river valley. The dogs' baying grew louder, then suddenly more frenzied. They had found the scent. Two Feathers estimated they had minutes, perhaps less. The stream, he told Mapia, though the cougar was already angling toward the sound of running water. They broke through the tree line onto the bank of a snow-choked creek, its center still flowing between icy edges. Without hesitation, Two Feathers waded in, gasping as frigid water penetrated his moccasins and leggings. Mapia followed, her powerful legs pushing against the current. They traveled downstream for 100 yards before climbing out on the opposite bank and immediately entering the shelter of pines. Behind them, the dogs' voices grew confused, then angry as they lost the scent at the water's edge. Two Feathers allowed himself a moment of grim satisfaction, the oldest trick, and still effective, but temporary. The hunters would split up, some crossing the stream to search the far side, and the cold water had its own price. Already, his feet were growing numb, each step more difficult than the last. "We must find shelter," he told Mapia, checking the compass again. The cougar suddenly froze, her attention fixed on something ahead. Two Feathers followed her gaze, but saw only swirling snow between dark tree trunks. Then he caught it, a flicker of movement, a shadow darker than the surrounding forest. A massive bull elk materialized from the storm, antlers wide as a man's reach. The animal regarded them with ancient eyes, unafraid, despite the presence of a natural predator. For several heartbeats, the tableau held man, cougar, and elk suspended in silent communion. Then the elk turned and moved deeper into the forest, its form gradually dissolving into the white haze. Mapia watched it go, making no move to pursue. "Strange," Two Feathers murmured. In normal circumstances, no wild cougar would ignore such prey. Mapia bumped her head against his hand, then began walking in the direction the elk had taken. Two Feathers followed, trusting her instincts more than his compass. They walked for what seemed hours, the storm's intensity finally beginning to wane. Occasionally, Two Feathers thought he glimpsed the elk ahead, always just at the edge of visibility, but could never be certain if it was truly there or merely a trick of snow and shadow. As darkness approached, bringing with it a dangerous drop in temperature, Two Feathers' hope began to falter. His wet clothing had stiffened with ice. Each breath burned in his lungs. Even Mapia's pace had slowed, her limbs clearly stiffening in the bitter cold. Then the ground before them suddenly fell away, revealing a narrow ravine sheltered by overhanging rock. At its mouth stood the bull elk, solid and unmistakable now. It regarded them one final time before bounding away into the gathering darkness. "A guide," Two Feathers said softly, understanding dawning through his cold-numbed mind. The elk had led them to sanctuary. The ravine's floor lay 10 feet below, accessible by a game trail that wound down its side. Two Feathers descended carefully, Mapia following with equal caution. At the bottom they discovered what the elk had brought them to, a cave entrance, partially hidden by fallen brush. Inside, the temperature rose noticeably, the air still and dry. The cave extended deeper than Two Feathers' limited vision could penetrate, but the entrance chamber was large enough for both of them. As he collapsed against the cave wall, muscles trembling with exhaustion, Two Feathers heard the distant baying of hounds, still searching but far away now, their voices carried on wind that could not reach into this sanctuary. "We have been blessed," he told Mapia, as the cougar settled beside him, her body warmth a shield against the encroaching cold. Dawn brought silence. The storm had passed during the night, leaving a transformed world outside the cave entrance. Trees bowed under snow's weight, ravine edges softened by white drifts, the sky a perfect, painful blue. Two Feathers stood at the cave mouth, assessing their situation. His clothes had dried beside the small fire he'd managed to build from brush found deeper in the cave. Mapia lay nearby, still resting, her golden eyes half closed in contentment. No signs of pursuit. The hunters had likely sought their own shelter during the worst of the storm, but they would resume the chase once conditions allowed. Parker was not a man to abandon his vengeance. Two Feathers turned back into the cave, drawn by curiosity about their sanctuary. The entrance chamber opened into a narrower passage that bent sharply left, then widened again into a larger space where darkness swallowed his vision. "Wait here," he told the resting Cougar, then fashioned a torch from a branch and kindling. The flame revealed a chamber larger than he'd expected, its walls rising to a ceiling lost in shadows. As Two Feathers advanced, his torch illuminated something that stopped him mid-stride: paintings on the stone wall, ancient images in red and black and white, handprints, spiraling symbols, figures of men and animals. Among them, repeated several times, was the unmistakable form of a mountain lion. "Sacred ground," Two Feathers whispered, understanding now why the elk had led them here. As he moved deeper into the chamber, his foot struck something solid. Kneeling, he discovered a stone pipe carved from red catlinite, its bowl shaped like a buffalo's head. Such pipes were used in sacred ceremonies by many tribes, though not typically by Apache. This one appeared very old, its surface worn smooth by countless hands. Two Feathers placed the pipe back exactly where he'd found it, making a small offering of tobacco from his pouch. Whoever had used this cave before, whatever tribe or nation, deserved respect. He continued his exploration, finding evidence of ancient habitation: stone tools, pottery shards, a circle of blackened stones from countless fires. The cave had served as shelter for generations before him. When Two Feathers returned to the entrance chamber, he found Mapia awake and alert. The Cougar greeted him with a soft chuff, then padded to the cave mouth to look outside. "We should remain here today," Two Feathers decided. "Travel when darkness comes." Mapia seemed to understand, settling back on her haunches to watch the winter landscape. Two Feathers joined her, scanning the ravine below for signs of pursuit. Movement caught his eye: not hunters, but a small herd of deer picking their way through deep snow, searching for forage. Mapia watched them with interest but made no move to hunt. Her behavior continued to confound natural explanation. "You are not what you appear to be," Two Feathers said softly. "What are you, truly?" The Cougar turned to regard him, amber eyes reflecting sunlight. For a moment, Two Feathers had the unsettling sensation that she might answer in human speech. Instead, Mapia's attention suddenly shifted, her body tensing. Two Feathers followed her gaze to the ravine's far end, where shadows moved against white snow. Riders, 3 of them, picking their way carefully along the ravine's edge. Two Feathers and Mapia retreated into the cave, watching from darkness as the hunters surveyed the landscape. They showed no indication of having spotted the cave entrance, partially concealed by fallen brush and drifting snow. "Parker," Two Feathers whispered, recognizing the lead rider's broad-shouldered silhouette. The rancher gestured to his companions, pointing toward the ravine floor, where tracks, deer tracks not cougar, were visible in the fresh snow. The men conferred briefly, then continued along the ravine's edge, eventually disappearing from view. Two Feathers released a breath he hadn't realized he was holding. "They search in the wrong direction," he told Mapia, "but they are too close. We must move tonight." As darkness approached, Two Feathers prepared for their departure. He gathered what little they had, considering their next move. The cave's discovery had altered his thinking. These ancient paintings, the ceremonial pipe, they spoke of a connection between man and mountain lion that echoed his own experience with Mapia. Perhaps their journey had purpose beyond mere survival. "We go north," he decided, studying the stars appearing in the deepening dusk. "To Apache lands, as planned." But first, he returned to the inner chamber, kneeling before the wall paintings. Using a piece of charcoal from his small fire, Two Feathers added his own mark to the ancient gallery. 2 simple figures, a man and a cougar, walking side by side. Now we are part of this story, he told Mapia when he returned. Whatever end awaits us. The cougar rumbled low in her throat, neither purr nor growl, but something between understanding perhaps, or acceptance of whatever fate lay ahead. As full darkness settled, they slipped from the cave into the crystal-clear night, two shadows moving as one across the virgin snow. 3 days of cautious travel brought them to the edge of a vast canyon, its red walls dropping 1,000 feet to a ribbon of water below. Two feathers stood at the rim, the rising sun warming his face after a bitter night. Mapia prowled nearby, seemingly refreshed, despite their difficult journey. Apache lands lie beyond, Two Feathers said, gesturing across the canyon. 1 more day, perhaps 2. The canyon presented a formidable obstacle. To the west, many miles distant, lay a natural crossing, a land bridge used by his people for generations. To the east, a series of switchback trails descended to the canyon floor, allowing passage but requiring a full day's journey down and another up the opposite side. West is safer, Two Feathers decided, but longer. As he contemplated their options, Mapia suddenly tensed, her gaze fixed on the forest behind them. Two Feathers dropped to a crouch, listening. At first he heard nothing beyond the canyon's whispered echoes. Then the soft jingle of a bridle, the creak of saddle leather, riders approaching. No time to flee without leaving tracks in the snow-patched ground. The ledge, Two Feathers whispered, pointing to a narrow outcropping just below the canyon rim. He slid over the edge, finding precarious footing on the shelf of rock. Mapia followed with startling agility, her powerful muscles controlling her descent. They pressed against the canyon wall as hooves approached above. Men's voices carried clearly in the still morning air. "Tracks end here," came a gruff voice, one of Parker's hired trackers. "The Indian wouldn't jump," replied another. "Even he's not fool enough to try the canyon walls without rope." "Spread out," ordered a third voice. Parker himself. "Check the rim in both directions. They can't be far." Two Feathers weighed their options, each worse than the last. The ledge extended only 20 feet before tapering into nothingness. Climbing back up meant capture. Descending meant a near-certain fatal fall. Mapia pressed against him, seemingly aware of their predicament. The cougar's ears flattened as boots scuffed the canyon rim directly above them. "Mr. Parker, over here." Two Feathers' heart sank. They had been discovered. Fresh tracks, leading down toward that ledge. "They're hiding right below us." A shadow fell across them as James Parker himself peered over the edge, rifle in hand. His weathered face showed satisfaction, then surprise at seeing them so close. "Well, well," he said, the rifle barrel tracking toward them. "Cornered at last." Two Feathers met his gaze steadily, one hand resting on Mapia's back. The cougar remained calm despite the weapon aimed at them. "Nowhere to run, Indian," Parker continued. "Send the cat up first, and maybe I'll let you live." "You will kill us both regardless," Two Feathers replied, his voice carrying in the canyon's natural acoustics. Parker's lips twisted in a cold smile. "You're right about that." As his finger tightened on the trigger, a cry pierced the air, a high, keening sound that echoed off the canyon walls. All eyes turned skyward as a golden eagle soared overhead, its wingspan casting a moving shadow across the cliff face. In that moment of distraction, Mapia moved with explosive speed, leaping upward onto the rim with a power Two Feathers had never witnessed before. Shouts and a rifle crack followed. Two Feathers seized the opportunity to pull himself up after the cougar. Chaos greeted him at the top. Two men lay sprawled on the ground, not dead, but stunned, their rifles scattered. Parker himself stood with his back to the canyon, Mapia circling him like a golden shadow. The rancher's rifle remained in his hands, but he seemed reluctant to fire, his eyes darting between the cougar and Two Feathers. "Call it off," Parker demanded, his voice less certain now. "As I told you before," Two Feathers said, retrieving one of the dropped rifles. "Mapia is not mine to command." A tense silence fell, broken only by the eagle's cry as it wheeled overhead. Suddenly, something drifted down from above, a single golden feather that spiraled on the air currents before landing at Two Feathers' feet. The significance wasn't lost on him. Among his people, an eagle feather freely given was one of the most powerful signs the spirits could offer. Two Feathers picked up the feather, holding it toward Parker. Even the sky hunters recognize our right to live, Rancher. Is your hatred stronger than their wisdom? Parker's face twisted with conflicting emotions. That cat killed my stock, threatened my people, not this cougar, came a new voice. Elizabeth Parker emerged from the trees, breathless as if from a long ride. Father, please. I found proof. She approached slowly, her eyes never leaving the standoff between her father, Two Feathers, and Mapia. What proof? Parker demanded, his rifle still ready. Tracks, Elizabeth said, by Miller Creek, fresh kills. While this cougar was miles away with him, she nodded toward Two Feathers. There are two cougars, father, always have been. Two Feathers felt the balance shift subtly, like air before a storm. The eagle circled lower, its shadow passing over them once more. Parker's gaze moved from his daughter to Two Feathers, then to Mapia, who had stopped circling but remained coiled to spring. Even if that's true, Parker said, his voice hardening again. This changes nothing. A wild animal belongs in the wild, or dead, not with a man. It's against nature. Two Feathers held up the eagle feather. Perhaps nature disagrees. The standoff balanced on a knife's edge. Parker's men had regained their feet, creating a loose circle around Two Feathers and Mapia. Elizabeth stood beside her father, her expression pleading. Lower your weapon, she urged. Please, father. No one needs to die today. Parker's grip on his rifle remained firm. Step away, Elizabeth. This doesn't concern you. It does, she insisted. You raised me to respect truth, even when it's difficult. The truth is standing before you. Two Feathers watched this exchange silently, the eagle feather still held in his outstretched hand. Mapia had gone oddly still, her attention suddenly diverted toward the forest edge. A new sound reached them, a rustling in the underbrush, too deliberate for wind. All eyes turned as the brush parted to reveal a smaller cougar, little more than a juvenile, its tawny coat marked with distinctive black flecks along its spine. Around its neck gleamed something man-made, a tiny copper bell on a weathered leather collar. The younger cougar hesitated at the forest's edge, clearly wary of the humans. Its eyes, however, remained fixed on Mapia. My God, Elizabeth whispered. Understanding dawned on Two Feathers, like the breaking of a long night. The reason for Mapia's unnatural behavior, her willingness to accept human help, her refusal to flee once healed, it had never been about her own survival. Her cub, he said softly. She was searching for her cub. Parker lowered his rifle slightly, confusion evident on his weathered face. That bell, that's one of the markers from Clayton's study. The university researchers who were tracking mountain lion populations last spring. They were capturing and releasing cougars, Elizabeth explained, her voice hushed with wonder. Tagging them for migration patterns. The younger cougar took a tentative step forward, then another. Mapia responded with a low rumbling sound that Two Feathers had never heard from her before, a mother's call to her child. The researchers must have separated them, Elizabeth continued. The cub was probably too young to remove the collar. Two Feathers recalled the strange tracks he'd discovered near the barn all those weeks ago, smaller cougar prints that had confused him. Not a different predator, but Mapia's own offspring, following its mother's scent. The cub approached cautiously, skirting the circle of humans to reach Mapia. The reunion transfixed everyone present. Mother and child touching noses, the older cougar inspecting her offspring with gentle nudges, rumbling sounds exchanged between them. She allowed herself to be shot. Two Feathers realized aloud. She was hunting near settlements, searching for her cub where humans had taken it. Parker's rifle barrel dipped toward the ground. All this time, she wasn't killing livestock, Elizabeth said. She was looking for her baby. The younger cougar still showed signs of human handling, its comfort with their presence, the way it tolerated the collar. But its eyes held the wildness its mother had seemingly suppressed during her time with Two Feathers. Mapia turned to Two Feathers, the cub, pressed against her side. Her golden eyes held his for a long moment, communication beyond words, an acknowledgement of the bond they had formed. "She needed me," Two Feathers said quietly, "until she found what she was truly seeking." Parker cleared his throat, his expression conflicted. The hardened rancher seemed to wrestle with something inside himself as he watched the two cougars together. "My wife," he said finally, his voice rough with emotion. "Before Elizabeth was born, there were difficulties. 3 babies lost before term. When Elizabeth finally came, my wife nearly died, bringing her into this world." He looked at his daughter. "I would have done anything to keep her safe." The admission hung in the air, unexpected and powerful. Parker slowly returned his rifle to its scabbard. "We're done here," he declared to his men. "The hunt is over." Two Feathers felt tension drain from his body, replaced by a bittersweet understanding. His journey with Mapia had always been temporary, a convergence of paths that were now diverging again. "What about the livestock killings?" one of Parker's men asked. "Something's still taking calves." "We'll find whatever's responsible," Parker replied. "But it's not these two." He turned to Two Feathers. "You're free to go. Both of you. All 3 of you." Elizabeth approached the cougars slowly, kneeling to examine the copper bell. "I can remove it," she offered, looking to Two Feathers for permission. He nodded, watching as she carefully unbuckled the worn leather collar. The young cougar tolerated her touch with surprising patience. "There," she said, setting the collar aside. "No more markers, no more human claims." Two Feathers knelt beside Mapia one last time, his hand gently stroking the fur behind her ear. "You are free now," he told her softly. "Your path is your own again." As if understanding, Mapia pressed her head briefly against his chest, a gesture of farewell. Then she turned, nudging her cub toward the forest edge. At the tree line, the mother cougar paused, looking back once at Two Feathers. In that final gaze was everything they had shared: danger and healing, trust and protection, a bond that defied natural order yet somehow restored it. Then both cougars vanished into the shadows beneath the pines, 2 golden forms melting into dappled forest light. Spring brought new life to the foothills. Wild iris dotted meadows with purple stars. Aspen leaves shimmered like green coins in the breeze, and birdsong filled the dawn hours. Two Feathers sat outside his newly built cabin, hands working a piece of pine wood with practiced precision. 4 months had passed since Mapia and her cub had disappeared into the forest. 4 months of change that had rippled outward from that month at the canyon rim. The knife blade scraped away another curl of wood, revealing the form taking shape. A cougar, body extended in mid-leap. Two Feathers had started the carving weeks ago, working in the quiet evenings after his daily tasks were complete. The sound of approaching hoofbeats drew his attention. Elizabeth Parker rode into view, her horse picking its way carefully along the narrow trail. Behind her followed a wagon driven by Samuel Reed, the trader who had helped Two Feathers months earlier. "Right on time," Two Feathers commented, as Elizabeth dismounted. "The supplies you requested," she said, gesturing to Samuel's wagon. "Seed for planting, tools, and those books on local plants you wanted." Two Feathers nodded his thanks. After the confrontation at the canyon, an unexpected peace had settled between himself and the Parker family. James Parker had withdrawn the bounty and, in a gesture that had shocked the entire community, granted Two Feathers a parcel of land at the edge of his property. "Your father joins us for dinner?" Two Feathers asked as he helped unload the wagon. Elizabeth smiled. "He'll be along later. He's still not entirely comfortable with all this, but he's trying." "That's more than most would do," Samuel observed, handing down a crate of supplies. "Times are changing, but slowly." The change had begun with Parker himself. Upon returning to Broken Creek, He had shared the true story of the cougar and her cub, how Two Feathers had saved the mother, and how his own daughter had discovered the truth. The tale had spread, growing with each telling until it had become something approaching legend. Two Feathers returned to his carving as Samuel and Elizabeth arranged the supplies inside his cabin. The wooden cougar was nearly complete, needing only final details: the pattern of whiskers, the alert ears, the eyes that had held such intelligence. "It's beautiful," Elizabeth said, returning to sit beside him. "You've captured her spirit." Two Feathers nodded. "For remembrance, and for teaching." In the months since Mapia's departure, Two Feathers had established himself as a healer and teacher. Children from Broken Creek now visited regularly to learn about plants and animals. Even some adults came seeking his knowledge of natural remedies. "Any sign of them?" Elizabeth asked, the question she posed on each visit. Two Feathers shook his head. "They have returned to their true lives, as it should be." Yet sometimes, in the deep stillness before dawn, he would find fresh cougar tracks near his cabin, larger ones accompanied by smaller ones. Never approaching too close, never lingering, but present nonetheless. A visitation rather than a return. Samuel joined them, lighting his pipe. Heard they finally caught what was killing Parker's cattle. Young male grizzly working its way down from the high country. Father was relieved. Elizabeth added, "It validated everything, that the cougars were innocent, that you were telling the truth all along." Two Feathers continued his carving, adding the fine details around the wooden cougar's eyes. Truth reveals itself in time. Whether men choose to see it is their decision. As afternoon lengthened toward evening, more visitors arrived. The sheriff who had once hunted him, now awkwardly respectful. Children eager for stories, even James Parker himself, stiff but cordial, bringing a haunch of venison for the communal meal. Two Feathers watched this gathering with quiet amazement. His solitary life had been transformed, much as he had helped transform the community's understanding of the natural world around them. After the meal, as twilight settled over the land, Two Feathers told the assembled group the full story of Mapia. Not the abbreviated version that had circulated through town, but the complete journey with all its dangers and wonders. He spoke of the bond formed through healing, of the cougars' uncommon intelligence, of their mutual protection during the long flight north. When he finished, a respectful silence held the gathering. Then Parker cleared his throat. "I've lived my whole life believing man must conquer nature to survive," the rancher said, his voice gruff with emotion. "Perhaps there's another way." Later, after the visitors had departed, Two Feathers stood at the edge of his land, looking toward the distant mountains now silvered by moonlight. He held the completed wooden carving in his palm, a small tribute to an extraordinary journey. A sound reached him from the darkness. Not quite a cougar's cry, not quite the wind, but something between. Perhaps only imagination, perhaps something more. Two Feathers smiled, placing the carving on a stone at the property's boundary. A gift. An offering, acknowledgement of paths that had crossed and changed each other forever. "May your hunting be good, Mapia," he said softly to the night. "May your cub grow strong." The stars wheeled overhead, ancient and patient. The story of the Apache and the cougar had already begun its journey into legend, a tale that would be told and retold around fires for generations to come. A reminder that sometimes the greatest wisdom comes from recognizing the spirit that dwells in all living things.